Hey there, AutoCAD fans. It's that time again. Yep, sad, isn't it? All right, let's see. Today, we're going to talk about exterior reference files. They have a tendency to scare everybody who hears about them, but they're actually extremely simple to use. They're not unlike blocks. Matter of fact, inserting them is very much like inserting a block. All an exterior reference file is another AutoCAD drawing that you're bringing into your drawing, and like a block, it's there. You can manipulate it some. You can't change anything in the file, just like a block, without exploding it. And you don't want these Xrefs, you don't explode. But the idea behind them is that if any changes are made to the master file, you'll get a notice down in the lower right hand side of your screen that, hey, this XREF has changed, do you want to update it? This makes it very easy for us to share files with engineers within an office and not have to worry about changes not getting, oh, two of you had this file open. Well, that won't happen. You can't do that. It'll give you a notice that that's the case. But you can bring it into your drawing and it will be updated periodically, so you don't have to worry about that changing. So just think of it as a block that updates itself. If you type XREF, because the command's XREF, I've got a new drawing here, so we type XREF. XR is the shortcut. Whoops. Be nice if I got into AutoCAD and not Word. Well, I guess that's not actually Word, that's the PDF. So XREF. You'll get this dialog box. This is on the next page there. Ooh, look, same dialog box. You'll notice in some ways this is very much like attaching, attaching an attachment on a email, and that's sort of what this is. Because with an attachment, we can't edit the attachment, and with an XREF we can't edit an attachment. But notice it's got the same little paper clip and everything. So you click on that, and then you can just go find the file you want to bring in. Let's see, where's one that we worked on? Of course, I picked an empty. Let's get that wall. Well, it's got a paper space. Let's go and pick one that doesn't have. There we go. This one doesn't have a paper space setting. So we'll bring in this file here. This is wall base. We hit open. And from this point on, it's going to look just like a block. It wants the scale. It wants to know about insertion points. A lot of times if you're bringing in floor plans, you want to bring that floor plan in at 0, 0 so that everybody's sharing that base point. So you may want to turn that off. That way that it doesn't prompt you for it. So you hit OK, and it just happens. There are times when you don't want to do this, but for right now, we'll just use that. That makes it very easy so that everybody's using it, doesn't have to think. So the more you can make people not have to think, usually the better when you're trying to coordinate things like this. So now you're like, well, this looks just like the normal file. How is it any different? You'll notice, like a block, if I go to move it, see, it grabs the whole thing. On your display, let me type this up because I've got mine changed. Where is it? Is it under? It has it to where the Xrefs are kind of grayed out, and it's under options. Maybe it's under display. XREF, yes, fade control. Yours probably looks something more along the lines of this, and of course it didn't change. And I can't even type. Well, I thought it would have been. Well, it should gray out. Why it's not doing that, I'm not quite certain. It should have done that right here. It even says controls the dimming of all drawing references. And that should have been it. Huh. Oh well. It'll probably be gray. If you want to fix it, type options. you'll probably want this. I like it to where it just displays normally, so I put this at 0. And this is probably in the middle somewhere too. You can actually type a number here. And then it displays it just its normal colors. It doesn't fade it out. I have enough trouble with my eyes. I don't need to be squinting at my AutoCAD screen to see the faded out XREF. It's also one of the reasons why I put my paper space color to black instead of white. Again, that's in options. If you ever do that, click on colors, and you can go to sheet layout, and yours will be listed as white. But if you want to change it to black, that's fine too. They did that so it was real easy visually to tell, oh, I'm in the layout, oh, I'm not in the layout. But all right, back to Xrefs. There's some other interesting things you can do about Xrefs. One, it's very helpful that everybody can share the same base plan, and you could do that with blocks. The problem is people have to reinsert the block and tell it yes, update and everything else. This way, as soon as they open the file, if they've got a new background file, it automatically puts it in. So no one has to do anything, or no one has to remember to do anything. Another interesting thing is, like, if I didn't really want to see all this stuff, there's a command called XCLIP. And you pick the Xref, and we want a new boundary, because right now there is no boundary. And we'll use a rectilinear one, which is the default, or I could just hit enter. And then you pick 2 corners. Ta-da! Right now it's set to display my Xref, I'm in the XCLIP, but it doesn't print it, so it's not a big disaster. Other thing is about these, I can take this and copy it over here. XCLIP, pick on it, and I want a new boundary because I'm going to change it. And delete the old boundary, yes. And this time I'm just going to do, well, we'll show you a polygonal one. I don't know why I'd want to do this, but and this is, shouldn't have had my snaps on. Well, we'll just do a funky one anyway. So you can do all sorts of things with that. You'll notice one of the other options with XCLIP, a new boundary, yes, was invert, or you could have selected a closed polygon. Invert, what it does, invert, let me do it with an existing, I'd only have to be able to do it with a new one. Invert lets you take, instead of everything on the inside, it goes to everything on the outside. XCLIP really should let me do that. Why is it not letting me do that? New boundary, yes. Invert clip, enter. Well, it should show just the outside. Never used an inverted one anyway, so occasionally I guess there might be a case for it, but I've never had to use one. Just like I've never had to use one of the polyline ones. These are real common for when we do like enlarged bathroom plans, enlarged stair plans, because copy, let's bring this over here, XCLIP, new boundary, yes, delete, rectangular, and we'll just pick this area. I'm using my shortcut for copy, And one thing about these, you can also drag the grips to edit them. So once you have one, you can actually just copy it and adjust it as you need it. And so this makes it very easy to do a lot of enlarged plans and things like that next to each other without having to do viewports and all this other stuff. So we could actually just start our dimensioning out in here, do what we want, and it's easier to do that in model space rather than trying to do it in paper space. I'm going to talk in the next lecture about why we might want to do a lot of things in paper space, like our notes and things like that, but that's the next assignment. let's look at how that this is very useful. Let's close this because we don't really need this file now. Here is an example of a file where it's looking at my master building file, the building section file. So these are clips from that. Well, let's go to the model space. It's more obvious. All right. These are actually clips from my, and you'll notice I've set up my sheet so I've got all the different scales outlined so I have an idea of how big each of the sheets is. But these are Xrefs or XCLIPs from that master building file. If we do XCLIP and I start the whole thing, new boundary, and delete yes, rectangular, you can see there's quite a bit more to it. Don't really want to keep that, so let's get rid of it. So these are two separate Xrefs here from that same, or clipped out of that same file. These are from the, well, let's type Xref. And you can see right now I've got a key plan that's an Xref. I've got a title block that's an Xref. I've got the first new plan and the second new plan and that tower sections. Let's go back to the layout and I'll talk about that. I actually talk about it here in the handout. Title blocks in particular, and you bring those into the paper space layout. These are very important because of that right there. That date is very important from a contract standpoint. If you don't have that right, it's bad. I mean, lawyers can screw you really bad. So by having this as part of a layout, so you fix that date one time and then it updates every time the file's opened up, you'll know it's fixed. You know, one person has to remember to do that once. If you have this date on every single sheet, someone's going to mess it up. We have architectural sets where you've got 100+ sheets. So yeah, you don't want to mess this up. What you'll put in here is stuff like just the text that's on every sheet. Like you'll notice this and these are not on that, just everything else. You can even put the architect's seal here if you wanted to. Some architects are okay with that, some do not. Some want to manually stamp them. But in this case, that is an exterior reference file. This is the first floor exterior reference file. Let's bring up the list again. Here, we'll stick it over here. So there's that key plan down here. The title block's here. This is the first floor plan, base plan. This is the second floor base plan. And then this is that section, you know, a couple of these are from the section drawing. Now, I didn't follow this as well as I should have here. It's a good idea to always put XR in front of the file that's intended to be used as an XREF. That way it sticks it at the bottom of the file structure, lumps them all together. It's very handy. What I should have done here, because this is the Bennett job, it's a renovation to the Bennett Music Hall here at SAC. I should have put XR02 Bennett second, blah, blah, blah. Here, let's see the whole name. Because right now it's just XR second new. Well, what project? You're really better off, like here I had XR title block Bennett. I should have done that here too. XR01 Bennett first new. And we have a first existing, that's why there's a first new. If you're starting with a brand new drawing, because this is an existing house, you may just have one that says plan first or plan second or something like that. And the reason we called it tower is this job, we've got two older buildings that don't meet this ADA or the Texas Accessibility Standards. If you're not familiar with those, go look up Texas Accessibility Standards or Americans with Disabilities Act and read through it, because there's a whole bunch of restrictions for people with limited abilities, whether it's in wheelchairs, which is the bulk of it, but it also covers visually handicapped, it covers people who can't have hearing loss, a whole bunch of things. And you need to start getting used to those numbers now, because like there's door clearances, a whole bunch of things. but you're going to use that a lot, so you may as well get familiar with it. You may not know exactly what the numbers are. I'm not saying you need to memorize it, but you might want to, it'll let you download a PDF copy, so that's worth keeping handy. So you can go, oh, what's the required height for this? Like a good example, and someone should have shot the lawyers. Counter heights typically in the world are 36 inches high. For wheelchairs, they determined that nope, they need to be 34 inches high. Well, the entire universe is designed for that 36-inch countertop height, including all the equipment that goes underneath them. So now you've got a problem. It would have been far cheaper, instead of changing all of the universe, to just make it so that wheelchairs could go up and down 2 inches. But they didn't, so we have to have 36-inch counters for everybody else and 34-inch counters for the handicapped. And half of the ADA is designed like, we can't make them feel different. Well, you just did that with making 34-inch counters. So there's a lot of issues, and it hasn't really been resolved. Having lived through the ADA being issued, what was before that was what was called the UFAS, Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards. And there was stuff in there that, I used to be married to a blind woman. And in the UFAS was this thing where under the handrails and a stair, there's supposed to be some dots just before you got to the top and some dots just before you got to the bottom. So if you're holding onto the handrail and you're feeling along, la, 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 you can tell you're at the top and the bottom. We were at the National Federation of the Blind headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's actually in Baltimore, but close enough. And I asked everybody there, and none of them had ever heard this. So it's like, great. So some legal person somewhere has come up with this, but just didn't bother to tell the blind people that it worked. And they said, anyway, we wouldn't trust it if it was, because it might not be there. It might have fallen off. Who knows? So we wouldn't trust it even if it really existed. And that section, because UFAS kind of got migrated into the ADA, that section is in ADA, but it says withheld. So there are a lot of issues with ADA that if someone actually thought about it, there's probably better solutions. There's a lot of really good information in there, things we need to know. Some of it's dopey and we have to follow it. Some of it's not dopey and is absolutely essential. But see what you can do. Wow, I soapboxed on that. Sorry. Let's get back to these. So anyway, we've got these Xrefs in this job. If we go into the model space, it's a little more obvious how I've used X. Because if we go look at this file, let's see if it'll let me do it. It's better not to open these reference files. Edit them in place. Let's go open it instead as a separate drawing. Here's the actual file itself. There's a lot of stuff in here. I've got some sections through the existing building. I've got some that I didn't use that I've kept just for reference and crossed out. What we are going to use this is just going into phase 2 now. So just a whole bunch of stuff. This is also where those, I did the viewports and then cut viewports for the wall types. Not in that one. Here's some. And I also cut viewports for these, for the details, the enlarged details. Now, the problem with having an XREF like this, in a real office, you wouldn't want to do this. Because if one person has this open, no one else can work on it. And that's bad. I would have been better off having this is one drawing, this is one drawing, this is one drawing, etc., etc. Or, better yet, take my wall types and have that be the master drawing, the master, XREF. And then we would use those to construct this building section sheet. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But doing it like this is bad because I've just restricted how many people can work on this. If you count the number of, like on some of these sheets, if you, on the that wall type sheet, if you count the number of wall types that were in there. It was like 16 or something, 16 or 15. So that's 15 people that could have been working instead of 1. Oops. Also, it's better if you don't put a lot of text in here. That way, if they're going to consultants or something or someone else, they don't have to worry about that. Better to put that in the what I call the A sheet, not the XREF. But that's me. I mean, you may get in an office and they may do something completely different. Don't say, well, Mr. Lane told me to do this. No, 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 no. What they say is what you do, even if it doesn't make sense. And I've seen some weird stuff. Like there's an office where instead of doing all their colors by layer, they would get each individual object and they would manually override the color and line type for every single thing. Yeah, that's why layers are useful. We don't have to do that. But anyway, that's how XCLIPs work. One other thing about these, let's bring up the layer dialog box. This is something else that's different about Xrefs versus doing the same thing as a block. You'll notice here's our layer structure, and if we come down, oh, what's all this stuff? The Xref keeps its own layer structure. So even though there may be an AFL-NO in this sheet, if there's an AFL-NO in the Xref, it'll stay that. And it'll say Xref 01, first new, and then this funny little shape here, which is called the pipes. I don't know why. And then the layer name. This is kind of handy. If I chose to, I could grab all these layers. Whoops. Let's grab a whole bunch of them. I can change the color here. And I haven't grabbed enough of them. Let's grab all the XO1s. Wow, there's a lot of layers in that file. Make them all color 8. And this is exactly what engineers do with the architectural drawing. So it's real obvious. Well, let's go back to the layout and you can see a little better. It's real obvious when they draw their stuff on top of the base plan, their stuff really pops out because this is all grayed out into just a, kind of faded into the background. So that can be a real useful thing for the consultants. It's also why we try to draw everything by layer, so that's easy for them to do. But anyhow, I had another point I was going to make. Well, anyway, these layers can be manipulated like this, and I have not changed the original drawing. That's just in this file, these colors are now being overridden. And so that's real handy. Let's see, is there anything else we need to talk about with Xrefs? I think it's Oh, the other thing you can do, you can adjust their line types, a whole bunch of other stuff, and line weight. So if the same thing goes, if they don't want my line weights to show up, they can grab all those. Oops, I'm down to well, we'll just grab everything. Let's go ahead and we'll make everything that. But we can also change it all to, let's say I want them not hardly seated at all, so I'll make it a 0. And now all of this will really fade into the background. So that's real useful occasionally. You may find times to use that. But anyhow, these are some things in the handout. I don't have an assignment for this handout. I'm putting one together. I'll try to send that to you all. It's basically, well, I'll show you that file. I'm looking at creating one. Where's that? Is it this one? Yeah, I think it's this one. In construction, we have to do what are called column details. And the column detail basically shows how, in this case, it's a stone. It's going to be bonded to this steel column. And the steel column is wrapped with this paper stuff because you don't want the mortar to touch the steel because it'll make it corrode. And we have these wire ties that attach, usually about every 18 inches, go between the limestone, well, this stone or the brick, and the mortar joints. And we have to do a detail for every single column. Now, we could have redrawn these, but if we've already drawn them once on this floor plan, we can just XCLIP that out. And so you end up with a whole bunch of details that you could then stack on one of these sheet layouts. I didn't do that here. What I did was I did it with viewports, and I put my text out here, and that's the next assignment we're going to talk about. Well, how do I get my dimension style to read 8 inches when if I just did a distance here, it would not read 8 inches? And we'll talk about that next time. So there's two ways of thinking about going about this. I could have, and then what I was going to do for the assignment is have y'all come in here and go XCLIP. Ooh, let me copy this real quick. And you can see it's already been XCLIP'd once. So XCLIP this. Oops, I'm still in copy. XCLIP new rectangular. Yes, delete rectangular. And jump to some weird object snap. Let's try that again. We love AutoCAD. Let's get it away from the other one some. And we'll turn my snaps off. So XCLIP this thing, new, yes, rectangular. You notice I'm doing that with the right click of the mouse. I don't actually have to hit the enter key. All right, and copy. And of course that's not the one I need, but the one I need is right over here. And then I have that highlighted, so I just move it. Copy, whoops. Using my C for shortcut copy. I think there's one up here. Trying to remember the floor plan. Yeah, there's one up here. Oh, no, there's not. It's on this side. Maybe. Well, where are the other columns? Here, let's just... Oh, there's another one. But you kind of get the idea. We could have set the sheet up this way. And we can move these. How about if I can type? In this case, it's not going to treat that as an endpoint. So if you're trying to do this, you're going to have to come in further in, but then we can come over here and snap it to this point here. And now that they're aligned, we can move. Hit your P for previous, because we can do that. Don't forget, that's a real time saver. And so you can line them all up this way. And I could have done this and then put all my notes out here. It's whichever your preference. But anyway, I'll close up today. We'll talk about doing everything out in the layout next time, and how to create a dimension style for that. All right. Thank you very much.